What up, Cucks? It's your boy, the Hater, and it's time for another Hater Reacts. This has been sent to me by Play Central. If you got anything you want me to react to, send it to me at indiewrestlingsucks@gmail.com. Cucks, don't forget to like and subscribe. Help your boy out. We're trying to grow. You know what I'm saying? Now, with all that being said, we're going to get to this video. But I want to take a moment to thank all of you for your suggestions. Thank all of you that have subscribed. Remember when we used to do subscriber shout-outs? Now I'm getting like 80 subs a day, so it's a little bit more difficult to shout you all out. But shout out to all y'all that have subscribed. Shout out to all of you that subscribed in the past. Shout out to everybody. You know what I'm saying? We're here to do it as a family, motherfuckers. As a family. So, and thanks to all those that have been donating to the Hater. The Hater doesn't do it for the money, but the Hater likes the money. Now let's get to it. Today's video is going to be Why Vince McMahon is a Terrible Genius, Part 1 by Adam of WhatCulture.com. WhatCulture is, I find it to be very annoying myself. They're just like, they have this like hacky ass dad joke level of humor, you know, middle of the road. They kind of like regurgitate a lot of like opinions that I consider to be neckbeard smart opinions. They got people like Dave Meltzer opinions, you know, things like that. But without further ado, let's get to it, Cuts.
Hello, I'm Adam from WhatCulture.com, and this is the Pipe Bomb.
Put the volume up for y'all.
Okay, I've wanted to do this video ever since I joined WhatCulture, but it's just trying to profile Vince McMahon, look at him from all sides, explore why it is he does the bouncing mental stuff he does, and
what's the point? The Hater just did 25 reasons why Vince McMahon is awesome. Just look at that video. You don't need to watch this.
try and get that done in under 10 minutes. That's a really good way to break someone's mind like a f***ing wishbone. Analyzing the mental state of a global media magnate who walks like a cartoon chicken is like looking into a screaming magic eye picture. Add to that the fact that Vince McMahon and I share a birthday, and I'm genuinely worried that doing this is how I'm fated to die. All
right, so this guy's been speaking for 42 seconds, and all he's been doing thus far is wasting time. Just get to the point. You know what I'm saying? Get to the fucking point. He's like, oh, it's hard to understand this. Shut up. Just talk about just see what you're going to say. You know, you've already prepared it.
Man is a man who revolutionizes industry and a man who will not stop talking about his bollocks. He is a revolutionary businessman, years ahead of his time, and a stubborn old man whose inability to change is a marked point of contention within his own company. He's God and the devil, the captain and the iceberg, the best and worst of not just wrestling, but also mankind. Trying to find a good entry point when discussing BigBadVince.com is hard, but I think it's this.
All right, before he gets to the actual meat of this, he's already wrong on so many levels. Number one, Vince McMahon is not the best and the worst of wrestling or of humanity, right? He's not the best of humanity. He's not the worst of humanity, right? But in the context of wrestling, how is he the worst thing in wrestling? What the fuck are you talking about? He is by far the most relevant figure in the history of wrestling. Everybody else is okay, if you were to rank the top wrestling figures, the most important personalities and people in the history of wrestling, it would be Vince McMahon first, all the way through like 10,000. And then after that, it might be like Stone Cold or Hulk Hogan or something like that, right? These people are going to want you to believe, oh, actually it's like Gene, like Frugalsmith, who was like the head booker of Southern Smoky Mountain wrestling fanatics, you know, in the Midwest. No, it wasn't that guy. That guy's a complete fucking nobody. You know what I mean? These people had absolutely zero impact on anything. This man is the best by far.
What he describes as the funniest thing in the world, which is shoving an unsuspecting person into a swimming pool. Now, he released that nugget on the Stone Cold podcast. Vince spent the majority of the interview towing the company line, evasive business talk here, gritted teeth apology to CM Punk there. But when he talks about pushing someone in a pool, his face relaxed, his posture softened, he got a horrible little twinkle in his eyes. He was finally and fleetingly comfortable. Now, a 70-year-old man with a net worth of $1.12 billion, figurehead of an entire subset of entertainment who launched a streaming service with over 2 million unique global subscribers in 170 countries, what brings him the most joy in the world is shoving dudes in pools. Now, there's a lot to unpack there.
No, there isn't. This guy, I don't know this Adam guy. I thought Adam was like the bald guy who's muscular. I guess it's this guy. But I know WhatCulture has like 15 Adams. But whatever, it doesn't matter. The point is, this guy is going to now seemingly overanalyze the joy that Vince McMahon has in pushing people into the pool. All right, first of all, he's obviously screwing around. But even if that is the thing that brings him the most joy, the whole idea is it's harmless, right? That's the whole point. Pushing people to a pool is hilarious because you're pushing them, they're falling, they're startled, they're going to get wet, but at the end of the day, nobody gets hurt. That's the whole point. That's why it's an acceptable thing to do in the pools. Like, at worst, you push someone in the pool, the lifeguard says, hey, no pushing, right? But it's a thing that people do because it's funny. You know what I mean? It's funny, childish humor. But this guy says there's a lot to unpack here. No, there isn't. It's really that simple. Now, if you go into like a deep Freudian analysis, that plagiarist Freud, who pretty much stole everything from Socrates, but that's not here nor there. Like, if you go into like a psychological analysis, you can say, oh, maybe this is like his childish, he didn't ever grow up, stunted growth. But the reality is, it's just a funny thing to do. It's a harmless, funny prank. That's the point. The point that Vince was trying to make was that he's a child at heart, cucks.
An inherent mischievous joy of tricking someone, a cruel, mocking sense of schadenfreude. It's childish, absurd, aggressive. It's fun. It's the heart of Vince McMahon. But most importantly, it's an act of dominance. Now let's talk about dominance.
Oh my God. This guy is someone that maybe he fears being dominated by other men. So something as simple as being pushed into a pool to him is like someone dominated me. Like, me and my friends would push out into the pool all the time when we were kids. It was hilarious. Nobody felt lesser than when they were pushed into the pool. It's just a joke, man. This is the problem with like WhatCulture and all these other. This is the problem with the internet wrestling community. Like, they all think they're smarter than they are. Like, there's absolutely nothing here worth listening to at this point. But I am enjoying the video, Play Central. So, thank you for sharing this with your boy.
It's physical dominance, financial dominance. Vince McMahon is fluent in both languages and speaks them in all capital letters. Ruthless aggression isn't just how WWE branded itself from 2002 to 2008. It's Vince's personal credo. In a starkly revelatory interview with Playboy in 2001, Vince talked about his childhood and the ruthless aggression that was battered into his DNA at a young age. He grew up first in a town called Manly, North Carolina, and that is perfection right there. Then in Havelock in a trailer with his mother, Vicky, his older brother, and a string of stepfathers. In particular, an electrician called Lupton who would regularly beat him. McMahon then went on the record in one of the biggest magazines in the world saying, "It's unfortunate that Lupton died before I could kill him. I would have enjoyed that." Well, all right then. In the same interview, Vince also hinted at something darker, at sexual abuse, not from his stepfather, but an older woman, and that's all he cared to say. It's implicit that the abuse was maternal, but that is a big assumption to make. Regardless, his childhood was a battle, and no one saved him except him. He perfected the art of street fighting. He would apparently kick the out of Marines at Cherry Point. He stole cars, ran moonshine, enrolled in military school, got kicked out of military school. Your standard hooligan bingo card. He finally left home and sought out his biological father, Vince McMahon Sr., and his business.
For some people, it's hard out there, motherfucks. Some people don't have the easy life that a lot of us have had. Vince clearly had a hard life, and he obviously hates this stepfather figure that would beat him, right? And he basically, to illustrate the amount of hate that he has, the amount of distaste that he has towards this man, he said, it's a shame that he died so I could kill him myself, right? The point being that, I fucking hate this guy. That's all that means. But this guy's like, ooh, what is this? That looks about like Vince McMahon's psyche. Whatever, bro.
Business then called WWWF, from which initially his dad wanted him kept well away. It was a hard upbringing, and one that, judging from his interviews, instilled in him an intractable masculine code. Power is all. Also, his childhood gave him a fierce pride in overcoming his circumstances and a disdain for those who cannot, an attitude quite typical of the American conservative. In the land of opportunity, Vince used ruthless aggression to escape a troubled youth and refuses to couch the idea that others can't do the same. In his own words, "I look down on people who use their environment as a crutch." He is the American dream incarnate, but also there is a distinct lack of empathy there, and that is key. Now, some history. The wrestling landscape in America in the 90s.
That's kind of true. A lot of people that come from nothing, but it's understandable, right? A lot of people that come from nothing, they get it in their heads that just because they came from nothing, that other people that have nothing can also become extremely successful. Now, while there's definitely some truth there, that's obviously an oversimplification. Vince McMahon, on top of everything that this guy is saying, which I'm actually enjoying this video, it's not this anti-Vince McMahon rant that I thought it would be. This guy's making some good points. And the idea here is that Vince McMahon, according to him, has no empathy. And I can totally see that, because a lot of people that kick ass at life, they're like, well, if I can do it, why can't you, right? This is in some ways a lack of empathy, but in many other ways, it's the ultimate form of empathy, right? They think of everybody as equal. They're like, well, if I can do it, you can do it. What makes me better than you? Nothing. Just the fact that I'm willing to do it. Now, some people are exceptional. Vince McMahon is one of those people. So just because he could do it doesn't mean that I can do it, right? Doesn't mean that Tony Khan can do it. So there's some truth to that. Now we're going to talk about the territories. Let's take a look at this map for a second and ignore it completely. Nobody gives a flying fuck. All of this was eventually eaten up by Vince McMahon and became WWE, apparently.
1980s, the early 1980s, was divided into a system of territories, with each part of America having its key promotions, venues, and bookers and talent. A lot of them belonged to the NWA, the National Wrestling Alliance, the wrestling governing body, whose champion was more often than not Ric Flair. For an example of territories, you had a world-class championship wrestling in Dallas run by the Von Erichs, the huge American Wrestling Association territory run by Vern Gagne and Wally Carbo, Stampede Wrestling in Canada run by the Hart, Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling run by Jim Crockett Promotions, Ric Flair's main wrestling home. You had Georgia Championship Wrestling in Atlanta, which would expand and morph with Jim Crockett Promotions to become WCW. Many more, including the newly named WWF.
Holy fuck, man. Nobody cares. I thought this was about Vince McMahon. Now, this video turned into like a discussion of the territories. Okay, let me just summarize real quick. Everybody that he just mentioned, except for Ric Flair, of course, who rules, everybody that he just mentioned is an irrelevant compared to Vince. Nobody cares at all. Would you rather have things be like this, right? Where there's like, oh, the North Canadian champion and then the Georgia champion. No, Vince McMahon understood that this is not what wrestling's about, you know, and it's not about taking it seriously. Or the governing body. What are we talking about? It's a TV show. There's no need for a governing body for a fake sport.
In the Northeast, run by Vince McMahon Sr. After a while of running shows for his father's promotion, Vince eventually bought his ailing father's stock, not inherited, bought, and set his eyes on expansion. The code of the territory system was you stay out of each other's yard. Everyone had their own main talent, and while sharing was okay, everyone left each other alone. Not ruthless aggression, Vince. In the mid-80s, he raided the territories, acquired everyone's top talent with lucrative money offers. He bought up TV slots and set about making WWF a nationwide company, putting loads and loads of promotions out of business. But as Vince would probably say, they were using their old traditions as a crutch. The WWF was going to be the only wrestling on TV, or Vince would die trying. And genuinely, it's surprising that none of the old wrestling brigade followed through on their threats to have Vince shot and his body dumped in a coal mine. He was a cold-blooded son of a bitch.
They don't have the balls to do that. Like this guy's making it seem as if like these are like a real tough guys. It's just some fat dude in Alabama. He's like, oh, don't do this to me. Vince is like, shut up. And he just came and did whatever the fuck he wanted. And at the end of the day, there's absolutely nothing wrong with this. You know, people a lot of times focus on the quote-unquote negatives of what Vince McMahon did. Oh, he took away all the alternatives. Well, the alternatives suck. Nobody said you can't have, you know, whatever, Heartland Wrestling Association or Stampede Wrestling. The idea is nobody wants to watch that shit if it's boring. Vince McMahon did something better. What is he supposed to do? Not try hard because everyone else doesn't want to try hard? No, absolutely not. It's completely reasonable. Right? It's the same reason why, like the NBA, if there's a good player in Europe, like Luka Doncic, for example, or Jokic, they're good players from Europe. And then the NBA is like, oh shit, these guys are good. They can help our teams and they can help our brand. So they bring them forth. Simple as that. How is this any different? You know, they make it seem as if Vince McMahon did something horrible. Oh, he put out these small companies out of business. Well, the small companies need to compete. This is how capitalism works, motherfuckers. And Vince is a capitalist.
Vince himself even acknowledges that if Vince Sr. had known what he was planning, he would never have sold his son his shares. Like a young boy stealing a car or imposing his will on an uppity Marine, Vince muscled his way to dominance without a care for the way things should have been, with the nation's eyes on his product.
Why should they have been that way? This is what bothers me about all this Vince McMahon criticism. Like, there's this association of dorks who are like, we're going to do it this way. And then one of them is like, oh, I don't like that. I don't want to do it this way. I think I'm going to do it my way. You know, like, join me or don't join me, right? Like, when Vince McMahon, like, the first time Vince McMahon took, I don't know, they showed a picture of Ted DiBiase. So let's say he poached Ted DiBiase from whatever, Jim Crockett Promotions. I don't know where the fuck he wrestled, right? Nobody cares. You know, nobody cared about any of that. Nobody cares about it today. So he took their biggest star, right? Then he took Dusty Rhodes, apparently. They showed him too. Now, the first few times he does this, everyone else should be like, oh, shit. I need to start doing the same thing before he buys my big stars. I need to make more money and buy other stars and compete. Now, these people don't want to compete. They want to be complacent and have their little territories, right? They want everyone to make $60,000 a year, including Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon has other aspirations. You see what I'm saying? Why is this bad? They're like, he did it without regard to how things should have been. Who decides how things should be? Vern Gagne? Who gives a fuck about Vern Gagne? Vince McMahon decides how things should have been, and that's why he's Vince McMahon, and that's why those other guys have nothing left.
He then borrowed the system that the NWA used to broadcast Starrcade via a closed-circuit TV system, soon to become the pay-per-view model, and he produced WrestleMania, gambling tons of money on a supercard featuring celebrities to establish a singular mainstream wrestling brand. And of course, the first WrestleMania was being planned at the same time as Vince's father was dying of cancer, his death sitting side by side with the crumbling of the territories. And maybe that's why he refuses to be called Vince McMahon Jr. His competition thought he was the devil, but because he won, we call him a pioneer, and he was. He saw the way cable TV was going. He saw that eventually, with the spread of technology and coverage, someone would have to go national. He made sure it was him, but his lack of empathy doesn't end there. Now, we've mentioned on a previous pipe bomb, Vince publicly outed wrestling as fake in front of the New Jersey State Athletics Commission in the 80s to avoid paying sports taxes on wrestling shows. He destroyed the territory system, and he officially exposed the business, and he created sports entertainment.
That's brilliant.
Is mercenary as hell, but he grew up outside the business. He didn't have that traditional carnival code of brotherhood built into him. Instead, that dismissive lack of empathy, partly stemming from an abusive childhood, partly aimed at people who couldn't get over their own circumstances, saw him dismantle what people had spent decades building. He burned down a series of towns and built a city in their place with his name on the biggest skyscraper. Screw Edge, Vince is the ultimate opportunist.
Exactly. I think we can leave it at this. The whole thing is pretty much done. But good little documentary. I look forward to part 2, which I'll probably react to later. But the reality here is as follows, right? Vince McMahon doesn't have to answer to anybody, right? He came and he changed things. And one thing, this is a fair documentary, but it's obviously a little bit, it's like almost 50-50, but it's a little bit biased against Vince, right? And the idea here is this. The guy, Adam, just said he destroyed the towns and built a city with a skyscraper that has his name on it, right? That's a pretty good way to put it. But let's also consider the fact that all the towns that he destroyed were shit, and the city that he built is amazing, right? That's the key takeaway here, right? He got rid of like some small promotions that you and I would never be able to enjoy if we don't live in the correct part of town or the correct part of the United States or the continent. And what he did instead was he normalized it, mainstreamed it, unified it, and as the guy said, created one brand of wrestling, the WWF, which would go on to become the WWE. This is why we owe a debt of gratitude to Vince McMahon. All of us would have missed out on so much if we had the territory system. So this idea, the underpinnings of this video, that I have to somehow feel empathy for Vern Gagne, right? And I'm supposed to prioritize Vern Gagne's like 35, fan crowd over my own entertainment is absurd. In my opinion, Vince McMahon is wrestling. And all those other guys, I personally do feel bad for them in the sense of like, yeah, it must suck to build something and have someone better than you come by and just take it. But Vince doesn't owe them anything, right? And that's the problem. There's this idea that like, it's a carny brotherhood. Yeah, that's weird. Vince McMahon was like, yeah, it's going to get in the way of me growing this and making it actually something awesome, which is what he did. So that being said, motherfuckers, Vince McMahon rules, and that's all there is to this video. I guess let's just finish it, see where it ends.
Last year, the company WWE saw $650 million in revenue because of an empire Vince built. He took what everyone held sacred about wrestling, and whether or not those traditions held the industry back, and he shoved them all in the water. That's all for this time, but we are not done. It's impossible.
There you go. He brought it back to the push people into the pool thing. Horrible metaphor, because this is nothing like that at all. But nevertheless, I enjoyed the video. Thank you, Play Central, for sending it to me. And if people like this, maybe I'll do the second part too. All right. And if you don't, blame Play Central, not me. Just kidding. All right, Guts, take care.